Imagine a city. Loud, chaotic, beautiful, unforgiving. A city where a boy with nothing but a dream dared to speak his truth in a language the world hadn't heard yet. Now, imagine that same boy standing on stage in front of thousands, millions. Not because the world handed him anything, but because he refused to be silent. This is not just a story about music. This is a story about identity, about struggle, about what it means to carry the weight of two worlds on your shoulders and still find the courage to rap about it. This is the story of Bohemia.
Before we begin, let's make one thing clear. When historians look back at the evolution of South Asian music, there will be a line. A clear, undeniable line. A before and an after. And right on that line, you will find one name: Bohemia. Born Roger David in the city of Karachi, Pakistan in 1979, he wasn't born into privilege. He wasn't groomed by a record label. He wasn't discovered at some glitzy talent show. He was born into chaos, raised in the streets, and forged by life itself. He would go on to become the first artist to bring authentic Punjabi rap to the world stage. Not a fusion, not a gimmick, real, raw Punjabi rap. And today, on Mind Legends, we are going to walk with him, from Karachi to California to the crown. To understand Bohemia, you must first understand Karachi. In the late 1970s and early 80s, Karachi was a city of contradictions. It was electric and exhausting, alive and dangerous. It was a place where you either adapted or you got swallowed whole. Young Roger David grew up navigating those streets, a Christian boy in a predominantly Muslim city, a Punjabi soul in an Urdu-speaking world. He was always an outsider. And here's the thing about outsiders. They either let the world crush them, or they use their pain as fuel. Roger David chose fuel. As a child, he was drawn to music the way other kids were drawn to food. It wasn't a hobby, it was oxygen. He heard sounds on the streets of Karachi, the call to prayer in the morning, the vendors in the afternoon, the arguments, the laughter, the heartbreak at night. And somehow, all of it became music to him. But it was when hip-hop found its way to Pakistan through bootleg cassette tapes and satellite TV that something inside Bohemia ignited. He heard Tupac. He heard Biggie. He heard artists speaking their truth unapologetically over beats. And he thought, why can't I do that in Punjabi? That single thought, that one question, would change music history.
In the mid-1990s, Roger David's family made a decision that would alter the trajectory of everything. They emigrated to the United States, settling in Stockton, California. Now, if you know anything about Stockton in the 90s, you know it was not an easy landing. Stockton was gritty. It was real. It was a city where hardship wasn't talked about, it was lived. And for a young immigrant boy from Karachi, it could have been the end of the dream. But the streets of Stockton didn't break Roger David. They educated him. He immersed himself in the hip-hop culture of America's West Coast. He absorbed the flows, the cadences, the heart of the music. He studied it the way a general studies a battlefield. And then he did something nobody else had done. He took everything he'd learned about hip-hop and he fused it with the raw, emotional depth of Punjabi poetry. Not Bollywood Punjabi, not the sanitized commercial version. Real Punjabi, street Punjabi, the Punjabi of his blood. He picked a name for himself, Bohemia. A name that meant someone who lives outside the mainstream, someone who refuses to follow the rules. An artist, a rebel, a free spirit. It was the perfect name for a man who was about to rewrite the rules of an entire genre. In 2002, Bohemia released his debut album. It was called Kala Jadu, Black Magic. And that name was not an accident, because what Bohemia did with that album was nothing short of sorcery. He cast a spell on an entire generation. Kala Jadu wasn't just an album, it was a manifesto. It was Bohemia standing in front of the music world and saying, I exist, my language exists, my people exist, and we have something powerful to say. The album spread through the South Asian diaspora like wildfire, from California to Toronto, from London to Dubai, from Lahore to Delhi. Young Punjabi men and women who had never heard their language in a hip-hop context suddenly felt seen, felt heard. That is the power of authentic art. It doesn't just entertain, it validates. And Bohemia wasn't done. After Kala Jadu, lesser artists might have rested, but this is a Mind Legends story, and legends don't rest. Through the 2000s, Bohemia released album after album. Vich Parte Sande, Skull and Bones, Pesa Nasha Pyar. Each one more refined than the last. Each one deeper, harder, more honest. And here's what most people don't understand about Bohemia's journey. He wasn't signed to a major label. He didn't have a PR team polishing his image. He didn't have investors funding his vision. He did it independently. In an era before streaming, before YouTube, before social media, he was pressing CDs. He was performing in small venues. He was building one listener, one fan, one city at a time. That's not luck. That's discipline. That's the kind of grind that most people walk away from because the road gets long and dark and lonely. But Bohemia didn't walk away. He doubled down. And slowly, the world started paying attention. For years, Bohemia was a god in the diaspora. In the Pakistani immigrant communities of North America and Europe, his name was legend. But India, the massive, complicated, beautiful market that is Bollywood India, India was watching from a distance. And then came the collaborations. Bohemia began working with some of India's biggest names, Char Botal Bodhta, Proper Patola, Punjabi Paise. These weren't just songs, they were cultural earthquakes. Billions of views, hundreds of millions of listeners, and at the center of it all was the man from Karachi. The outsider had become the foundation on which an entire industry was now standing.
But let's pause here for a moment, because success, especially the kind Bohemia achieved, is never just a straight line. There were controversies, there were feuds, there were moments when the industry tried to define him, box him in, dilute him. And there was always the identity question. Pakistani or Indian, East or West, underground or mainstream. And Bohemia's answer throughout his entire career has been the same. All of it. I am all of it. He never let anyone strip him of his complexity. He never performed Punjabi for a Bollywood audience and forgot where he came from. He never chased trends at the cost of his truth. That kind of integrity in an industry built on compromise is rarer than talent. And it's what separates legends from celebrities. So, where does this story end? The honest answer, it doesn't. Bohemia's legacy is not measured in album sales, although those numbers are staggering. It's not measured in views, although those are in the billions. It's measured in every Punjabi kid who picked up a pen and wrote their first rap line. It's measured in every South Asian artist who looked at a world that said their language wasn't cool enough and said, "Watch me." It's measured in the genre he built with his bare hands that now has thousands of artists, billions of dollars, and global stages. Bohemia didn't just make music. He built a movement. And movements, the real ones, outlive their founders. At Mind Legends, we study the lives of people who chose the harder path, people who were told no and heard a challenge, people who faced walls and built doors, people who carried pain and transformed it into purpose. Bohemia is one of those people. A boy from Karachi who crossed oceans, who navigated two cultures, two worlds, two identities, and emerged not broken, but crowned. The lesson here is not just about music, it's about what happens when you refuse to shrink yourself for anyone, when you take your outsider status and turn it into your superpower. When you go from Karachi to the crown. If this story moved something in you, subscribe to Mind Legends. Hit the notification bell. Share this with someone who needs to hear it today. Because legends are not born. They are built.